it's like the two sides of who I am. The one side that was like, win at all cost, eat your first child, do what you gotta do, right? It's easy to say because I don't have kids. I'm not eating Bob, don't worry. Welcome back to the Recap Show. It is such an honor to be here with all of you doing what we love. We are going to kick this off with a little update. Tobin, why don't you tell everybody what you have been up to?
Well, I am at halftime, basically, of my Club World Cup experience. I flew back home for a solid 48 hours to come on TRS and say hi to my family.
What are you doing for the Club World Cup?
So I like to just put it as I'm geeking out on football, but really what it means is I eat, breathe, sleep the Club World Cup. And it really feels like I'm back in camp mode where everything, my whole life is revolving around these games, except for instead of playing the games, I'm watching the games. And instead of it being like one game every however many days, it's 4 games a day because we're like in the group stage. So it's been really fun, really engaging. I'm learning a lot. I'm watching so much football that, you know, my head is just exploding with ideas and concepts and culture, and I'm being provoked. And it's completely changed the way I look at the game, and I'm very thankful, honestly, for the opportunity.
Well, we're going to get into how exactly it's forever changed the way you look at the game. Okay. But when I describe what you're doing, I say that Tobin is the first ever woman to analyze a men's tournament for FIFA. And I like when you're the first, so brava. And you're sitting on a study group with 5, but it really looks like 6 other men who are all extremely accomplished, tenured coaches. And you don't have your coaching licenses. And you are a woman, and you are much younger than all of them. So when I look at the photo, I giggle. And I have asked you this because the thought I have is any normal person would have imposter syndrome, or I don't even know if it'd be imposter syndrome because you don't really belong. But
what's the giveaway?
What the question is, do you feel intimidated when you give your take on the game to some of the greatest minds in football?
To be honest, no, I'm not intimidated, but I am coming in with a little bit of reverence and humility because, and I would hope the same would be true if any of these men were to do a technical study group for the women's game, because if this time has given me any clear understanding, it is how different the men's and women's game is. And it's not from a tactical analysis of the game. It's like we would analyze the actual game exactly the same. But the cultural aspects, the motivation, what the players' experiences are such a huge factor when you come to, we're analyzing these trends, but these trends that seem almost mathematical at times don't make any sense without the context. Mm-hmm. And we are the context.
Yeah,
the TSG group is the context of what's being analyzed at the Club World Cup. There's now millions, it feels like, of data points when it comes to football. But the data doesn't matter unless it's being interpreted correctly. And who better to interpret the data of the game, the data that actually matters, the data that changes the results and the outcomes of the game than the people that have been in those moments themselves. And for me, that's the part I love. And I talk about like marrying the art and the science of football, and that in itself is an art and a science. And everybody comes at it in a different perspective and does it differently. And it's so cool to hear, like Roberto always talks about when he faced Arsene at Arsenal and talks about like even the tactical battle between those two managers. And now they're here, they're analyzing the games together. And it's just fascinating because ultimately we're doing all this, one, to democratize the game and the information around the game. Because what happens, as you know, at World Championship, it's like the U.S. women's national team comes, we have all the resources in the world, we have data and analysis, we have sports scientists, we have the largest staff, we come with the biggest budget. Then we're going to play Thailand. Thailand has zero data analysis on their squad. They have probably the least budget, the least amount of staff, the least amount of expertise. And what FIFA is doing is they're really democratizing the game, because all of this analysis that is happening at the most elite level is being given free. Like, you can go on FIFA Training Center right now and you can get all of the data. And honestly, like, we're not going to see as much need for sports scientists or data analysis individually as much as we're doing currently, because all of this is going to be accessible to the whole world, not just to the top countries, not just to the biggest budgets. And to me, that changes the landscape of sport. And that's exactly what FIFA should be doing.
Well, this is all so exciting. I think like the reason that I ask and I giggle and I laugh is because I think it's actually incredible that you are able to be in that room and have so much confidence. And I hope everyone can hear that special thing that's in you, that like me, who has a very similar career, like it blows my mind that you would be able to do this. And that's not to say you're not qualified. And that's not to say that you don't deserve to be there, but you don't fit in by design, and it doesn't scare you. And I think that's incredible, and something that I just wanted to share. I also think it brings up the sense of like what diversity really means and tokenism and all that. Because like, first of all, like you said, if any of these men were analyzing the women's game, they would be new. And yet you're not new. Like, you've been watching the men's game your whole life. And I think that they brought diversity with intention to this group. But yet it doesn't, when I look at the group, it doesn't look like diverse. It looks like 6 men and Tobin Heath, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like 6 older coaches and then Tobin Heath.
Yeah.
But I think this is the hard part of that process. FIFA, we all know what FIFA stands for. It's, a powerhouse. It has its corruption. It has its like the most powerful organization that rules across countries. It's actually scary how much money and power it has. And they are, and especially with Jill Ellis in the position that she's in, pushing for more diversity. And at the beginning of that, it will be uncomfortable. But the importance of having your voice in that group so that you can push them to reimagine and to restructure and to rethink. And I can only imagine that Arsene is learning as much from you as you're learning from him. And I hope one day we'll have him on the show and we can hear all about it.
He's the best.
But I would like to hear one thing so the thing that's stood out for me in your storytelling is it's all been about your group. Like, you've maybe told me like 3 things that have happened in a game, but every time you light up, it's like, oh, we went to breakfast and this is what we talked about. And I would like you to share with our beautiful audience of Reimaginers a little story or a lesson that you learned from working with these incredible teammates that you've made.
Yeah, I think I love like kind of team culture in general. Like, we wake up, we eat like breakfast together, like not like there's no set time. It just kind of like happens. And then we all like analyze different games throughout the day, but we're all kind of like in this shared space. So a lot of times, like, I'll be analyzing a game and one of the other TSG members will come up and like will be asking me questions about the game, and like we'll be like riffing, and it kind of feels like this like shared experience in a lot of ways, and we're asking each other a lot of questions.
Can you give us an example? Like, one that you told me was like, what motivates the players?
What motivates the players?
Fathers.
Oh, yeah. So one of the really cool conversations we've had, I've been paired up a lot with Roberto Martinez, who I like adore at this point. I've learned so much from him, and he's one of the most positive forces I've ever met. He comes down every morning, and you always ask people like, "Oh, how you are?" and he always says, "Fantastic." And I had this one story, like we're like at this kind of like shitty cafeteria, like at halftime of the game or whatever, and he's just like, "This is amazing." And this is a guy that, traveled around the world. He's had like these incredible opportunities. He's probably the most popular men's coach in the world right now because of his win with Portugal at the UEFA Nations League. And his just spirit of positivity has been such a force in my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm more positive, you know? And then, so we're at this cafeteria and I'm just looking around. I'm like, this food is so shitty, you know? Like it's cafeteria food. And then there's like an ice cream like trunk or like cooler or whatever. And, you know, we get back and he had like grabbed something and then we're back, it's halftime and he like pulls out and he's like, Haagen-Dazs. Amazing. And this is like the weirdest story. Okay, but that's just like his personality and like it's incredible. And I've had like such a joy learning from him because I could ask, like there's no question I could ask that he'd be like nose up in the air, like, oh, I can't believe like you said that. I could ask him like where the bathroom is and he'd be like, what an incredible question. You, when the ball's played out wide, then you move to the left, you know, like I feel like it's just like his spirit has been like such a joy to be around and to learn from. Actually, even analyzing games, I have just been a sponge absorbing everything that he said. And the coolest part was we're having a conversation about, he always asks questions, which I love about all the members is like these people that have all the experience, they're continually asking questions. And that's a huge part of this group. That's why we're here is to ask the questions, you know, to get to the answers. And so Roberto asked us, and it was funny because Heather O'Reilly actually had joined the conversation and she was in town for a day. And Roberto said, do you know what the number one, I've asked my players, my Portuguese players, do you know what the number one motivation is for these players to win a World Cup? And Gilberto Silva was, you know, giving his take and like from a Brazilian perspective. And he was like, you know, pride, like to win and all this stuff. And everybody's kind of saying what their experience has been, right? And it was funny because I think Heyo and I just said like to win, like the team always wins, like, you know, for us to be a part of that winning like legacy. And then Roberto was like, every single one of my players, I asked them, I didn't know what to expect. I just asked the question. Every one of my players said for their fathers. And I think it's those conversations, like the analyzing the games have been powerful, but it's the conversations like that. Because that's culture.
What
right?
I love to see is the inspiration that you've found that is around the game. And, you know, so much of this show is like how the culture of football teaches us about the culture of life. And like, you know, even having a coach that cares enough to ask all of their players what motivates them.
Oh my gosh.
It just shows a lot. And I think you have it being in that group with people that you've admired and wanted to be mentored by.
Yeah.
And then going into their spaces and they're inquisitive and they're asking, they're not telling. It's really beautiful. And I actually do think it is representative of different cultures.
Yeah.
And how different cultures approach. I want you to tell one more story.
Okay.
Of when you landed and what you had packed and what you were wearing and then what happened.
Oh, yeah. So it was funny. I didn't really know what to pack for this trip. I've never been a part of this before. So I like filled a whole suitcase. I was going to Miami, so I filled a whole suitcase on what I thought was like Miami like wear.
Shorts, tanks.
Yeah, you know, just like hot weather. And so I get there and then of course I'm given like a whole nother suitcase of just like straight up FIFA Adidas gear, which like I was like, thank God, because I just love a good uniform. Like I don't want to think about what I'm wearing. So immediately like I was like, I'm in my element, like this is camp, you know, I'm wearing like my gear. But then for the game, Jill came up to me and she was like, oh, like, did you bring a suit, you know, for the game? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, you need to have a navy blue suit. And I was like, oh gosh. So then Zuby, who's like the head of our TSG group, he was like, no problem. These guys are awesome. He's like, no problem. He's like, there's a great mall right around the corner. Like, he's like, just go and get something. So I'm like, oh, great. I love this. Like a chance to get suited. This is going to be like so great. So I go to this mall and this mall only has like luxury stores. So I'm just kind of like, pick which luxury suit you want. And so I go and I'm like, okay. So I like walk into Gucci and I'm like picking out my like navy blue suit or whatever. And I'm just thinking, this is like so ridiculous. And so I get my suit and I'm feeling like
get your custom tailored
so amazing.
suit.
And then I show up, I come down on game day, and sure enough, every single person is in a navy blue suit, which like, thank God Jill was like, you really need to have a suit else you're really going to stand out. And like, I just loved it. And I think it's that aspect of a team.
You loved it. They gave you
Well,
a credit card
suit,
and sent you to Gucci.
Yeah, I love my suit, but I also just love, like, I love the camaraderie, and I am...
Don't try to make it what it's not.
No. I just want to say I love my suit, and I love the way my suit makes me feel, and I love being a part of the team of suits. But...
You are a suit.
I'm a suit. And
I would like to say that I like all your photos with you and the boys in your suits.
Oh, the boys.
And you have your little sunglasses on, and it's just so great.
They always make fun of me in my sunglasses because I always come down to breakfast in my sunglasses, and they're like, oh.
No, you're just going on a tangent. And scene. So despite the fact that there's always a lot of controversy on FIFA, and recently they have removed some of their anti-racism campaign language, despite the fact that they need to do a lot better when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. One thing I will say is that I am so glad that you are there and a part of this organization, and that, you know, Jill Ellis is also pushing the organization forward. It is essential that we have disruptors and disruption in FIFA, and that you're there to show the importance of a diverse set of perspectives. And I think that it's really, really meaningful, especially in recent times.
Yeah, I think it's, I felt that way when I decided to do this. And I do think part of disrupting spaces and being the first in spaces is being uncomfortable and knowing like this organization is supposed to be representing the global game at large. And it's politics times a million. And in order for us to have the diversity of perspectives, of voices, of people in these rooms, it is going to have to continue to have people speaking up about the things that matter the most and not being silent and just going with like this big organization making decisions. And I think like that is something that I'm really proud of, is because when I'm in this room, and this is like a very small part of, you know, one competition and whatever, but when I'm in this room, I'm representing something so much bigger than myself. And every time I speak, I know that that's a disruption in itself. And I don't take that lightly. Like, I know what I'm doing there is important. And even just when I'm showing up in the spaces, when I walk down to breakfast, I'm the only woman there, you know, pretty much during the whole entire tournament. And like just me even being there, my presence being there. So like, look, I think we have to continue to hold these huge organizations like a FIFA to the highest standards, but also we have to bring our perspectives.
Yeah.
You know,
one of our early campaigns was why resist when you can reimagine. I think we've since come to an idea of like, let's resist and reimagine.
Yeah.
We can't just reimagine.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, FIFA's too big of an organization to turn your nose up to. You have to resist, you have to reimagine, and you being there is such an important part to disrupt and to shake things up. So it's just sitting here, I'm realizing it's a bigger impact than I even knew. But it's hard. It's hard for you to take that job. You know, it's hard for you to go and be a part of that organization. But like, look at what small changes, just like in a couple of dudes that you're hanging out with and having breakfast, how you can just shift their mindset. And on a woman's football.
And honestly, my mindset has been shifted because it's so easy to criticize. It's so easy to criticize an organization like FIFA. But I've been a part of rooms in the last week or two with people that have the power to make change. And I've heard what they talk about, and I've heard what they care about. And it is the same things I care about, you know? So I would say, like, as much as I am definitely a part of, you know, women's soccer that has a very hard time when we look at FIFA and we look at, you know, equity and distribution and like opportunity. It's really difficult. But I have now a new perspective because now I'm actually learning more about the organization and I'm actually learning more about the initiatives that I don't know about. And it's a huge responsibility. And unless we continue to have our voices heard and the things that we care about at the forefront of it, is like, it's just going to keep getting overrun by what we would call the status quo in football is going to keep getting overrun.
And I remember your first week, because the FIFA Technical Study Group, there was diversity embedded in that group. I think diversity should mean like 50% or more minorities, whatever. But there was some intention brought into that group. And I remember within the first week, you told me that you had already gone to leadership and said, well, look at this group and look at that group. And there's not enough racial and gender diversity. And that's why you have to be there. And the hope is that next time, next year for the World Cup, there will be.
Yeah.
And, step by step.
Step by step. A big reason why we started the recap show was to be able to give like athletes stories and perspectives on kind of the landscape of the sport and women's sports at large. Going into this Euros, there's a couple stories that we've just been kind of fascinated by and talking about a lot at home for a lot of different reasons. One, because we've been a part of stories similar to this, and there's a lot of nuance to them. And it reminds us of going into past world championships that have had these types of dynamics. So do you want to just get into these stories and just talk about how we feel about them?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the first storyline going on into this Euros is Mary Earps, a dear friend of ours. We love Mary. And just her decision to, one, not play in the Euros, but also retire from international duty.
Yes. So we played with Mary at Manchester United, and actually she was one of our good friends there. She's a homie and she's incredible. I remember before we got to the team, when you were like, we're going to Manchester United, I was like, okay. And then you were like, let's watch them play. And at the time, none of the players on United were known. None. Now you would all know all their names. But at the time, it was like a young up and coming team. And the first comment you made was, oh, the goalkeeper, she has something. And you always say that in particular in that position, it's so important to have presence, to have attitude, to have character. It's almost more important than the other nuances of, the technical and tactical. And when we've played with big character, main character energy goalkeepers, and we know how important that is, especially in a tournament. So we're going to get into this. So about a month and a half before the Euros are kicking off, Mary announced that she was retiring from the England squad after having been the goalkeeper for the last Euros where they won, and then taking the team to the World Cup final, where in both tournaments she had big main character energy performances. Mm-hmm. So this was a big shock when we saw this news.
Yeah, it was a huge shock. And I think in particular, I want to say she did say that this is a decision that wasn't made rashly. It was, she had been thinking about this for, over a year. We knew that the number one spot was going back and forth between her and Hannah Hampton, and it was unclear who was going to be the number one goalkeeper going into the tournament. But it seemed like Hannah won that spot, or Serena chose Hannah. And then quickly after knowing that this was kind of a decisive or the decision that was going to be made, we found out this news. And one of the quotes that she said, which was interesting because I think this is what she's giving out, is that she said, it's time for me to pass it on to the next generation now, which was a very beautiful quote. But I think there were a lot of parts about this story that kind of it got us into some really serious discussions.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note we did not talk to her directly. We obviously messaged her, but we are working with the same information as all of you. But it brought up in our life a lot of mixed feelings. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because we sacrifice so much to be at what we call a world championship, even though this is a European championship, that it feels like being miserable, suffering, being second choice, that's just all par for the course. Mm-hmm. It almost feels like one does not opt out of that misery because that's what we all signed up for when we were 3 years old and decided to play soccer.
Yeah. And I think also there's this idea where for me, I thought like it's such an honor representing your country. And you don't always get to decide what your role is going to be. And actually, we still don't necessarily know what her role would be. We just know that come the start of the tournament, that she wasn't going to be the first goalkeeper. Actually, who knows? Hannah Hampton could pick up an injury today as we're talking, and all of a sudden, Mary Earps isn't there. Well, There's two uncapped goalkeepers in the wings. And we're looking at a much different storyline.
And actually, you're talking right now about the thing that is hardest for me to grapple with. And I know the goalkeeper position is different because it's so much certainty in who's number one, right? Versus every other position. But I cannot imagine going into a tournament and believing that a player that starts the tournament is going to end the tournament. I cannot imagine being told like, hey, Christen, you're not a starter, in my mind, and actually believing that. Because I think in the fabric of the U.S. Women's National Team, in the fabric of the DNA of how we were raised, maybe our generation, maybe always, I don't know, it's like you're a relentless optimist.
Yes.
And I just think they're going to need me and I'm going to be ready. And like you said, the goalkeeper could get injured before the tournament starts. The goalkeeper could have a bad game in the first game, and now you've got no experience at all. And I've seen time and time and again, coaches decide at the last second. You have to imagine a coach's stress monitor goes up and up and up and up and up until the first game of the tournament, maybe to the final of the tournament, right?
Yeah.
And those decisions under pressure change.
Yeah.
So how you're feeling a month and a half, 2 months before the tournament is a lot different than how you're feeling before that first match.
Yep.
And I've seen again and again coaches fall back on what they know.
Oh, totally.
They call up Ali Krieger, they call up Mo Bryan after not being in camp for 2 years and say, well, I know what those players are going to do.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think we can go actually like a little bit back to like the actual decision to go with Hannah Hampton. We talk about this all the time. There are just in-tournament players. And once you prove that you're an in-tournament player, that at the most important moment, you can do the job to the highest level. Like that is the stamp that you need of confidence, of approval from your manager. And it is hard for me to believe that Serena, with what Mary Earps has on her resume in international tournaments, both in the Euros and the World Cup, that you don't go, heck yeah, like that's my number one goalkeeper. That's the easiest. That's the first name on my team sheet. And I don't care how somebody's doing in club because international football and the pressure of these world championships are so much higher than any kind of club football. I remember Alyssa Nair going into the World Cup or going into this past Olympics. She had given up the most amount of goals in the NWSL. And yeah, of course, she was playing for, one of the worst teams in the NWSL. But still, like, nobody thought like, oh, now she's a bad goalkeeper, or oh, now she's not going to be able to go and win an Olympics. It's like the confidence that we have in players that have delivered is like, yeah, of course.
There is nothing that can indicate how a player is going to do under that amount of pressure, except for having done it before.
Yeah, and her teammates have the confidence too. Yeah. And I think her teammates like back her. That's a feeling I get within the locker room. And so it's interesting that Serena, I think, has made a bold move. I think it is a move based on, current form or whatever else she was thinking, but it also kind of brings up the tensions in locker rooms, right? The tensions between these positions. Like you said, a goalkeeper position, it is an isolating position. We always talk about this like goalkeeper union, the three goalkeepers. And the second and third goalkeeper, they're really there to support the first goalkeeper. And for whatever reason, Mary didn't believe that like she could do that job, maybe to protect herself and her own mental well-being in this relationship, or like she just didn't want that role.
And it's unique because, the only players that are like constantly side by side in training are midfielders who, when you play in 11s, match up against each other. So it's always the most ruthless thing in like 11s because you're playing against the person that has your spot, and goalkeepers because they're always separate from the team. And so if I'm a forward, my competition, I never contact in practice because they're on the other side of the pitch. And so there is a more interesting dynamic between goalkeepers on a roster for a world championship that I definitely think plays a role here.
Yeah.
And I think from where we started, hard to understand kind of like brings up or kind of like triggers something in me. It's like the two sides of who I am. The one side that was like win at all cost, eat your first child, do what you got to do, right? That's easy to say because I don't have kids. I'm not eating Bob, don't worry. I would rather lose. And then the other side of me that remembers somewhere under all the trauma and conditioning that you don't actually have to do this job, that any person for any reason can say, hey, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And that
that's a hard.
Yeah. And it's like unfathomable because you work so hard to be put in a position and then to be able to step back and look at it with a level head and say, I don't want this position. I put myself in this position, but I don't want it. It's actually really, really wise. And it's almost unfathomable that someone could have that amount of perspective after you sacrifice so much to be there. Mm-hmm. To be able to make a decision to protect yourself or to opt out or to take control of your own destiny. And while, you know, this one half of me is like, whoa, I can't understand this. The other half of me is like, wow, I'm so proud of this human for whatever her reasons are. At the highest level, at the high stakes, with all the backlash, that country, England, man, they really know how to tear down their athletes. Like, under all those circumstances, she stood up and she said, this is what's best for me, and nobody's going to understand, and she's just going to do it anyways.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to hear, like, this is what's best for me, because, like, no team in my mind could ever win a world championship with any player that says, this is what's best for me. Because it is like the ability to win these is so reliant on being able to sacrifice and being able to do the job that you don't want to do, like that hurts you, that pains you for the best of the team. And for me, like a quote saying like, oh, this is to pass on to the next generation. What more could you do for the next generation than be an example on the bench supporting the next generation?
I know what.
And I
know what. You can show the next generation that it's okay to be human.
And I love that. And that is
the tension here.
That's the tension. And this is why
we're so uncomfortable that she just not.
This is why we're talking about it, is because like there is that beautiful tension. And I love like that human part to it. And I think we've been just completely brainwashed on the U.S. Women's National Team that like we never had a choice like that. Or, you know, it would be foolish to give up the gift, the privilege, the opportunity to play for your country and represent your country from whatever job you're being asked to do.
Okay, so one caveat, and I don't want to make this about me, but it is my expertise.
And it is my show.
Perfect. You know, in kind of my work for the last couple of years, like the scariest thing that I've done is ask myself if I want to keep playing.
Yeah.
And it's the same question, right? Like you're like, oh, it's hard for me to hear like she didn't want to do it because it's not best for her. But the interesting thing that comes up is, what if you ask yourself and it is what's best for you? Mm-hmm. And like either way, the answer's more pure if you're not afraid to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And like what's wrong with just thinking about yourself or for yourself?
But maybe it's not just thinking for yourself or about yourself. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
And I hope we're doing the nuance to this justice.
Yeah.
But anyways, we love you, Mary, and good luck on your journey. And we will miss seeing you in an England kit, and we will miss all the jerseys you sold.
And you better believe if England doesn't win this Euros, which they're one of the favorites to win, I firmly believe it will be because she's not in goal.
And also, you can always come back from retirement.
Oh yeah, that's never finite. Okay, another storyline that's kind of percolated before this Euros is France's team selection. The French coach decided to not go with any veteran players and has gone with a completely young and new team for this Euros. The likes of Eugenie Le Sommer, and a Wendy Renard, who we've seen for what feels like 2 decades. And a surprising one for us, Kenza Dali, who plays here in the NWSL. And why we say that is because she's been completely dominating the NWSL. She's just been playing some top-class football. It's hard, like given what we just spoke about, to think that somebody that is at the top of their game, that has big game experience, is being left off a roster. It's really hard. But we talk about experience and we talk about why it's important to have experience on the roster. And the truth is, France has consistently under-delivered at World Championships. We say they're the best friendly team, but when it comes to World Championships, they under-deliver. They always have a talented roster. They always come in, like top in the world, top 5 team in the world. And when we look at our opponents, we always think, oh my gosh, France has it all. They have it all to win. And they never win.
Have the French women's national team ever won a world championship?
They've never won a world championship.
Yeah.
They've never won a world championship. So then when you talk about the importance of experience, what is experience worth? Because why you would want to bring an experienced player is to teach the younger generation how to win, right? None of these players are bringing any experience in a world championship, in a French national team shirt, in how to win.
Not in how to win at all. True.
In how to win it all. And I can't help but think, and this is why I say, like, I think France is like my dark horse, because I can't help but think that this is a bold move.
You like it.
But I love it. I love it because honestly, this is the way I kind of felt like I think it's very hard to transition when you're kind of holding on to the old and you're kind of going into the new. And I think we experienced that as the U.S. Women's National Team in the 23 World Cup, where it was like this awkward tension, whereas I thought that was a big moment that our team needed to shift, and we didn't fully shift. And then, look what happened. And then obviously the Olympics came, fully shift, we win a world championship. But for me, this is a bold move by the coach, and he's either going to look like a genius if France does something special, or there's going to be, there's going to be a lot of talk around, oh, these players should have been there. And for this one player in particular, Kenza, she came out and said there's been a lot of lies. There's been a lot of lies about what's been going on. And who knows what that means. She said she's going to wait till the end of the tournament to tell her truth about her situation in the Euros. And I think we all want to hear the truth, right? But I think for a player playing as well as she's playing, it's definitely a disappointment. You play really well for your club to be in contention to be selected for these major tournaments. And it's hard as a player to know that you're playing your best football and you're not going to be able to influence.
Well, what this brings up for me, because you made so many good points, is that the best players don't always make the best team. And so what you're talking about, we all know Tobin loves a bold move, right? Like, we love that. That's why we watch these tournaments, for Tobin's takes on the bold moves. But when you're talking about a player that's in form, that's not past her prime, you're not talking about someone that was going to just like come on the bench and bring experience, right? You're talking about someone that is at the level that they can help your team win. And, you line up all the players on a roster, and I think people from the outside want to see the 23 best players, and that is not what brings the best team. And so I think reflecting on our own experiences, there's this question of, well, what else do you bring if you're not playing well? What else do you bring if you're not playing? How do you ensure your spot on the roster if the soccer isn't enough? And I think we wish that the soccer was always enough. Like, it's sport. We want it to be fair and pure. But the reality is there's a lot of nuance here. And we've seen countries like Japan clean house and come with a really young squad. And we've seen them lose with that squad. And then we've seen that squad grow up and dominate. And so you don't really know what's happening on the inside. But one thing that I really understand is, if you were to say, Christen, describe the French women's national team, I would say the best team in the world that can't win. And if that is the legacy those players carry in their own country, I don't know if it is. They win a lot in Europe. They win their league, they win their cups, they win Champions League. It's not that they don't win, but at an international level, if that's what the legacy is, it does make sense to say, hey, here's some fresh blood.
Yeah.
Maybe this next generation, maybe they're not as good. Maybe they are, but maybe they know how to win.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'll scrap and fight in a different way because they're young and they don't have as much experience and they don't have those older players to rely on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I was going to bring up another point, but I think that's like totally spot on. And I think throughout the Euros, like these are obviously stories that at home we've just been discussing at length because there's so many different sides to it that you can justify, right? You can justify taking her. You can justify like not taking her, a change of energy, a change of, you know, generational shift, whatever it is. But those are like the storylines we look out for at the beginning of a tournament because it really affects the whole energy throughout the tournament. And everybody's kind of waiting for an action to happen that proves their point was right or that person was wrong about something. And I think ultimately this tournament will be decided by these decisions from these top teams.
As tournaments are.
And it'll be fun to watch.
I would also just like to say like the last Euros shifted football forever.
Yeah.
And the women's game has been so dominated by international football because there's more resources than club football. And England winning at home, it just changed things. And I think it's really teeing up this Euros to be impactful in new ways. Like a lot of money got invested into these European clubs since the last Euros. And club soccer has changed. It's gotten better. And I think in the US and in the NWSL, you know, we have an influx of international players. We're kind of being compared more and more to other leagues because other leagues are getting better, right? And I think there's an interesting effect that this tournament is going to have on global football, and I'm very excited to watch that.
Well, in terms of like effect, like what team winning would be the greatest effect on global women's football?
You tell me.
I think it would be England. I think when you talk about like who Jessica Berman would not want to see win the Euros, it's England again because the landscape shifted and they all of a sudden became, you know, hello, women's soccer in their country, and it blew up like crazy. And we've seen like the reverse, like with Spain winning, nothing really changes. Like with Arsenal winning this past Champions League, it has shifted the dynamic of football in that country. And if England win again, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah,
but
you're
if
so
Spain win, if Germany win, if Sweden win, the landscape doesn't change. The landscape doesn't change.
Well, it's interesting because I think in Spain, club soccer affected their international soccer.
Yes.
And in England, I think their international soccer has really affected their club soccer. So
100%. That's such a great topic.
For another discussion.
Got to stick around with us.
All right, folks. This is a new little ditty that Tobin is very excited about.
What's ditty?
She's been asking for our producers to pull YouTube comments about the show from you all, our beautiful community. And from my knowledge, I think YouTube is one of the harsher places to look for comments. So I can't wait to see what you all have to say.
Okay. They say, so this is in regards to confessions of a bad gay.
Okay.
Keep this segment coming. Maybe share queer herstory you are learning with all the refans and educate the masses. The Gen X and millennials are standing on the shoulders of those who walked the, for them, very dangerous path first.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that my ignorance is being celebrated here on YouTube. I don't feel that I am the right person to build her story. But what we might be able to do is have our wonderful team compile all the things that people have been telling us.
And then put it on our shelf.
And then integrate those into the albums and the books that we have on our shelf.
Yes.
I love that.
I feel so much more educated after that segment and all of the comments. I feel so much more educated.
Oh, and art. Just in case you want to keep them coming. We have space for art, candle makers, albums, and books.
And plants are queer.
Plants are just queer.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Jouch. All I can focus on is the jouch. Jouch is fire.
The jouch has gone viral. We've actually called it, Kristen currently is doing the slouch jouch.
The jouch slouch.
The jouch slouch. It didn't sound right when I said it. I knew it was wrong. Which can happen on this.
I'll just say that I picked an all blue outfit, so I'm just ahead. All you can see is a jouch and a head.
The jouch is a vibe. Many butts have contributed to.
Our Bob really likes the smell of the jouch, and I think it's because it's the smell of many butts.
It's a vibe. All right. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Instagram. Oh, this is from Instagram.
Nice. It's probably going to be sweet.
Gay pop culture recommendations. Yes, listen to Fletcher, King Princess, Chappell Roan, Renee Rapp, watch The Happiest Season, Christmas tree emoji, Imagine Me and You, Gia, fire emoji. You already wear plenty of rings. Good job. And have some upper ear piercings. Thumbs up.
Upper ear piercings?
Some tattoos wouldn't hurt. Crying face. Maybe a little.
What? We do not have upper ear piercings.
You have multiple piercings.
In the lower lobe.
So not gay?
I don't know. At one point I wanted a lip ring. Remember that?
No, I wanted a lip ring. You just said that.
Oh, no. That's not true. I wanted a nose ring. Remember I used to wear that fake nose ring that clipped on?
Yeah.
And I had to clip it on really tight.
Yeah.
Then I'd sneeze and it would go off. Is that gay? Okay, another YouTuber.
Yeah.
Loving all the pride content. Let's go, lesbians. We all made it to the yoga mat. That's all we have to do.
I love that. Great comment.
Oh my gosh, that means they understood my metaphor. Thank you for understanding me.
Perfect.
My
I think
metaphor?
a lot of people can relate to that.
My metaphor was perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think sometimes being queer, queer culture is kind of intimidating. That's what I've learned.
I just have to say, queer culture is intimidating, but the queers are so supportive of us.
Love the queers.
They are. This was the sweetest YouTube bashing of my life.
I know. These must just been.
But I'm telling you, the women's soccer community loves me.
End scene.
All right, the Euros are coming. So when y'all are over there, please send us little videos. Are they videos? Okay, send us little iPhone videos of your experience in the crowd, on the streets. We want all of this community to feel like we are able to be there. So send us your content at hello@re-email.com.
And we're calling this our Euro postcards.
Thanks.